There's 6 different emotions. There's angry, joy, surprise, humor. And when you get down into the emotions that you want, the thing that you need to remember is that people will reply or reciprocal with an emotion based upon the emotion that you share. If I share with anger, then other people are going to reciprocate with anger. If I share with surprise, people are going to share with surprise. The thing that we tend to do as humans on social media is we share the same emotion all the time. And again, we go flat. Try the emotions wheel and see what flavors you can put out so that you can get a more dynamic human feel for who you actually are. And then you're going to drive more engagement.
Welcome to another episode of Uncensored Direct Marketing. Today, I have Bryan Kramer. Bryan is an expert in everything that has to do with online marketing and social media. He's actually been ranked as one of the top 10 marketing influencers on LinkedIn. He's authored several books on marketing and social media, including Shareology and Human to Human. You can find his books on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or anywhere books are sold. He also did a TED Talk when it was cool to do a TED Talk. So that was about 8 years ago. He focused on the power of sharing your experiences on social media. So TED has been around for quite a long time. He has helped over 200 companies with branding and creating their social media and marketing strategies. Right now, he's an executive coach and he helps business owners learn how to scale and create efficiencies within their organization. So I'm very excited for you guys to listen to my chat with Bryan. I hope you enjoy. And as usual, please like and share this episode if you find any value. Welcome everybody to another episode of Uncensored Direct Marketing. Today I have Bryan Kramer. Bryan has a very long past in direct response, specifically in social media and everything media related. Bryan has 14,000 LinkedIn followers. Bryan has transformed over 200 companies with his executive coaching. He did a TED Talk 8 years ago when it was actually cool to do a TED Talk. And he's been ranked as a top 10 marketing influencer by LinkedIn. So welcome, Bryan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Awesome. So, we have so much to cover with you. You have so much experience in everything that happens in kind of the whole marketing angle of everything in the direct response business. So, can you tell us, as I mentioned in the intro, you did a TED Talk 8 years ago. And you were talking about, social media 8 years ago. So obviously social media has evolved and we've seen so many different things happen in social media. Can you tell me a little bit about obviously your TED Talk and where have things progressed since then in social media?
I would love to. So the social media back then was, believe it or not, it was probably about 4 or 5 years, maybe a little more in. And we were at a point where social media was giving companies a run for their money. No longer was it about TV, radio, and newspaper. They had two-way communication, which changed everything. You could go on and say how annoyed you were at how late your pizza was on Twitter if you wanted to. And so, there's a lot of changes that happened with brands in communication that they had to get used to and still are getting used to. I don't think that's changed. I don't think that they quite have that down yet, but they're closer. They're farther along. And so that's the thing that's not changed. The thing that has changed is that I think everybody considers it table stakes. Back then it was like, well, do we really have to do this? Do we have to be involved? And now it's like, oh yeah, it's just part of our plan. We need to be involved in a communications plan on some level and in a customer service plan. So how are we going to support our customers if they show up on a certain platform? What's our game plan around that? So there's that. There's also the way that advertising has changed too. Social advertising has changed, with Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And the whole ad model has completely shifted everything. My TED Talk was about how sharing powers the human economy. And that was the other side of things. That's where the consumer has the voice. And what is that voice? How do they use it? And so for the first time in TED history, I got approved by the CEO of TED to bring in cell phones and use them during a TED Talk. It was the first time they allowed that. And they actually used we used Twitter at the time because it was the best platform to share how how we can inspire ideas together. And I used the hashtag sharing inspires, and my TED Talk was the first one in the day. And then I came up at the very last part of the day, and we showed on screen in front of everyone how we could inspire everyone around the world from one little theater of 250 or 300 people. And it was neat to see how we can influence each other. At the end of the day, the dynamics showed how people connect and how they share and what they share, and we learned a lot. So it was a really neat experience. It was something that I think I'll do quite differently the next time, because I was surprised by I didn't know the results until I was literally walking up on stage. So the butterflies in my stomach were massive at that time, and I was a ball of stress the whole time, because it was my first TED Talk. But other than that, it went really well.
Oh, awesome. So, I mean, the one thing, that I took from that is obviously you talk a lot about human to human, right? So you have, if anybody's watching on YouTube, you'll see that Bryan has a hashtag H2H on his backdrop. And, human to human interaction is obviously important. Via social media, it's still human to human, obviously, because we're talking to each other. But one thing that has kind of progressed in terms of social media is, just in my opinion, I've been a social media user since its inception, and I'm aging myself, but yeah, so I've been around for a while, and I've been using, Facebook and all the big platforms for a long time. I remember Facebook and particularly because that was like the biggest first one, it was a lot more sharing of, pictures, let's say vacation pictures or things that we're doing or trying to organize people and so forth. Whereas now it's almost like progressed a little bit to different people's agendas and, sticking to your brand, sticking to your people, news. It's really become almost like a hub for life versus its inception. And I guess its use case at the beginning was really just to connect with your people. So how does that affect brands? Like, how can a brand connect? We're always, consumers are now very weary of connecting with brands. They don't like necessarily being sold. They want to just kind of come to their conclusion. So going from like sharing person to person to now like kind of really interacting with businesses and not trying to be fooled and so forth. I guess the best question to ask is, how can a business continue the human to human interaction when it's a business that's actually interacting with the human, not an actual person?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So the best businesses out there, and I outline this in my book, Human to Human, are the businesses that run on the three pillars of what makes us the most human business ever. And so I'll ask you a question, three quick questions. So I'm prepping you and everyone listening, think about this, the answer in your head, and think about what you might think as I ask this, which is the first one is simplicity. Which brand do you think embraces simplicity?
I mean, are you asking my personal preference? Like something, yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't want to turn anybody off or anything, but like I like Goop as a brand. I like their social media. It's very white, very plain, muted colors, and totally, and it speaks to me.
Oh, I know that brand really well. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think they've done a fantastic job of understanding the brand, what they stand for, and what they're selling, what their mission is, what their vision is, and why you want to belong to it. And so it's a great example. I think a lot of times people use Apple as an example of how simple it is, that they you can count on two hands what they sell and know exactly where to go and what to buy. There's different ways that we embrace simplicity, but that we as humans, we tend to make things more complex, and yet we gravitate to simplicity. The things that are most simple are the ones that make us more endeared. And so the next one is, which one do you believe embraces empathy for its customer, which sometimes shows up as customer service?
Empathy. I can't say really at the top of my head. I don't want anybody waiting here, but I really can't think of any brand that I feel is empathetic, like specifically. And I'm probably not the best user because I don't use too much of social media. So I don't know. Fill me in. What do you think?
A good one that you might think of, and it wouldn't be top of mind for a lot of people, but Amazon's a good one, only because they really don't give you a hard time on returning any product. If you go to return a product, it's pretty simple depending upon what country you're in. But there is an easy flow, and they understand that the customer really just wants to get their product back. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't work, it's not to expectation, no questions asked. Just return it more times than not. Nothing in life is perfect, but more times than not.
I would say that's not, you're right. That's not really an example I would think of. I don't see Amazon. I see, when I think of Amazon, their image for me is efficiency. And speed, you know what I mean? Empathy is not necessarily something that I would equate to the Amazon brand, at least for myself.
Yeah, no, hey, and it's different for everybody. And it depends on how, what level you look at it. That, as a brand hierarchy, I would completely agree with you. But to the customer support or service level, their empathy for the customer is quite high. They get scored high for that level. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of brands out there that I think would fit empathy for brands that embrace it. There are also brands that don't embrace it, and you can see why, that you don't connect with them very well. The last one is imperfection. What brand, and this is a hard one, so try to think outside the box, but what brand do you think might have embraced a challenge or something that happened to them, and they came right out and they said they were transparent about what happened, they were honest or truthful about what happened? That's a brand that embraces imperfection. Anything come up for you?
Well, I mean, when you talk about imperfection, I feel like the first thing that came up like really quickly was Twitter, because I feel like, Musk taking over Twitter, there's just a lot of things that are not working. And he's kind of like, yeah, it's not working, but we'll fix it. Don't worry about it. And like, he's just kind of, people are following him anyway. I don't think that he's apologetic about it, but I would say it's an imperfect brand, and he's embraced the fact that it's imperfect and he's trying to fix it.
I got to tell you, that's a great answer. I haven't heard that one before, and I love the thought. And that's certainly thinking outside the box. There's the another side to it that could be like a company like Dove that embraces the imperfection of skin. So, now we just pointed out so many different examples of ways that we see things through our eyes and how we see brands, which is different for all of us. And when you put simplicity, empathy, and imperfection together, those are actually the traits that connect us to other humans. It's what we like. What attracts me to another human being is typically those three things. What we don't realize is it's the same thing that attracts us to a brand. And when we start to align our brand messaging and our engagement and everything that we do online within the human traits, we're going to start to be attracted to that brand even more so as well.
Interesting. Well, I mean, it's usually, at least on social media, we're talking about social media, it's usually the opposite that people say, right? Because we're bombarded by images of perfection. We're bombarded by, extreme efficiency and coaches telling you how to get things done perfectly. And now you're telling us, that the opposite is what is making, brands connect with their customers, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it has a long shelf life for perfect pictures making me want to buy something, and nor do I think it does a lot of people. In fact, I think it creates FOMO more than anything else. And the people that have come forward, and when you look at people like Brene Brown, who talks about vulnerability, and more people alongside that movement, the brands and the people that show up on social in the most real human way. And there's a lot of people that do that well. We connect with them more, and it's longer lasting. It's not short lived. And so, yeah, perfection has a place, unfortunately, and at least perceived perfection. I don't when nothing, there is no such thing as perfect. But the perceived perfection lives there, and it doesn't last.
Okay. So if we kind of take it more to a tactical level, and let's use my company, Direct Painted, as an example. So I have a lot of followers on my personal side. I kind of share some ideas. I try to give value. I also share some of my personal life, here and there. And I'm getting, invites and people who want to follow me. And then we have our brand, which is Direct Painted, which is my company. I'm the founder of it. And obviously we have a team here. And we're not able to crack the code of connecting with customers. Like, our social just isn't growing despite a lot of content being put on, a lot of, which providing a lot of value, giving people a lot of information. Why do you think, and obviously, a limited amount about my company and so forth, but why is it that people are willing to follow Maria Sparagus and listen to the same almost advice that I give as Maria Sparagus, but as Direct Painted, not interested?
Yeah, it's the same challenge that most companies have that don't have the budget of Nike. And when you have a budget of Nike, you can start to humanize the brand. So they humanize the brands around people like Michael Jordan. And when you start to be attracted to the brand of Air Jordans, you start to identify a little bit more around that brand because you see yourself in the brand, and you want to take on a certain aspect or certain trait or modality within the brand. And so it's the hardest thing for us to do is brand ourselves, is to show up as ourselves through another brand. Most of the time, this is why, we call it cobbler's kids. As marketers, we can't market ourselves, but we can market everyone else. Yeah. And so creating a brand for you on and having a brand voice versus having your own personal voice is like a split schizophrenic challenge. And so how do you show up as your human self on both? And it has to be defined. And so what I like to do is and there's two things there. One is that we always have our favorite. It's kind of like our blogs. Like if we blog, have two blogs, we always have our favorite. It's like our favorite child or whatever. And the same thing goes for social media.
Have a favorite child.
You're not supposed to have a favorite child, but I mean, like it's just like you have this favorite that just stands out because it's just the one you lean towards more. But the thing that I think creates the biggest distance when you have a voice through a brand is deciding whether you're going to speak through the brand or you're going to speak as yourself through the brand. And I think speaking as yourself through the brand is probably the best way to go unless you plan on becoming Nike. So creating more of that first person voice and giving more insights, creating more in-depth transparency into what is going on inside the brand is going to help as well. I don't know I haven't looked at your Instagram, or your profile, so I don't really know if that's the case or not, but that's typically what goes on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the fact that, what you're saying is that, myself, for example, being more at the forefront of the brand than using words like we help this, or we do this, right? Regardless of what I'm getting from you is, regardless if I have a team or not, I should be the representative of that. And I should be, explaining things and getting people into, let's say, the funnel, into our world, in order for them, for my team to take over. What you're saying is basically a brand should have an ambassador. Just like Nike. Nike is not just showing us shoes. They're showing us Michael Jordan. I like Michael Jordan. That's why I like the shoes. I don't like the shoes and then like Michael Jordan in consequence. So that's an interesting takeaway. In terms of, creating social content and, how to spin it and so forth, there's been so many advancements, obviously, since during your tenure of working in this space. Obviously the hottest one is AI. The new kid on the block that everybody's talking about. In a world now where we can create unlimited content very quickly, how do you see this progressing, and how are we going to be able to get, a slice of that attention, given that, I think, in my opinion, in the next couple of years, we're going to be exposed to 20, 30, 40, 100 times more content than we are now.
So is the question, how do you get a slice of attention using AI tools or,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you get attention? And then we're going to have another question after that, which is how to use the AI tools. So let's just kind of cover everything AI. I think it can kind of intertwine between both aspects of AI.
Yeah, well, I don't think that how we get attention is changed. I think it just speeds up how we get attention, and now it's a race to attention. It's always been about attention, or awareness, if you will, and creating things so that we can get faster at it. The ironic part is that technology has already been around and created the exact same problem. It's just speeding up the same problem that we've already had, which is that a lot of companies are deciding to use technology in place of humans. And I don't think that should be the case. I think that, it should be technology and humans working together, not one or the other. And the thing that we want to remember is that everything that we do is about bringing relationships together faster. And so how do we create a relationship faster? Now, how do we replace a human relationship? And so if we're looking at like in a funnel, or we're looking at creating a digital marketing campaign of any kind, and not looking at it and taking a step back and saying, where are the human touch points in the midst of all this, then we've done something quite wrong. We have to actually look at it and say, how do we make this faster using AI? And then where can we insert people so that we can create those human touch points that still make a difference, more so now than ever. In fact, right now, being human is everyone's competitive advantage. If they actually step up and actually become more human in what they do, they're going to stand out even more than everyone else that's automating everything. So it's actually, now's the time to send a handwritten thank you note to somebody in their mailbox, because I don't receive anything in my mail other than spam and mass printed stuff and bills. So, this is the time when you can be more human, not less.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So, I believe, and I'm in the same mindset as you, is that, every advancement of technology just brings more jobs and more opportunities for people to connect, whether it be the internet or social media or anything. It's just created more opportunities for people, which is always amazes me, as like every time there's a new kind of big thing in technology, new kid on the block, like AI, people are saying is going to wipe away jobs, is going to do that. I'm like, but let's look at our past. Every single thing that has made humans more productive has actually increased productivity and increased the amount of jobs and increased the amount of opportunities. So, I think I'm in the same mindset as you, that, we just need to have more human contact, and we need to use these tools to make things better, but not necessarily erase what we have. Talking about, productivity and efficiency and so forth, and keeping on the lines of AI is, being a social media person right now is there's people who offer trainings, and there's different types of coursework that you can take, but a lot of times it's trial and error. You see what works, what doesn't, and you keep doing what works, and so forth. So I'm just curious, if we get a little bit tactical here, like, what are some of the best practices? If somebody's kind of, they have a mildly successful brand, and they, they're an online business. What are some best practices? Is it posting every day? Is it posting every platform? Is it finding your best platform? Is it posting multiple times a day? Is there specific thing? Because this is, I think it's the conundrum that every business owner has. As we hire social media people, myself included. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know if it's any good. I don't know what we can do to make it better. It's hard to coach because it's just so, it's not like a math problem or a spreadsheet where you can say, put that there and that's going to work. So do you have any best practices or anything that you can share with us in terms of how often to post and how to build your brand on social media?
Well, so every platform has its own unique reason for how many times you should post. Like on Facebook, I wouldn't post as much as I would on Twitter, and on Instagram, I wouldn't post as much as I do on Facebook. And so, so that it just depends on if it's a story versus a post and, all that kind of stuff. But if you're just looking at a general, like, way of approaching things, then and I write about this in my other book in Shareology, how to share and how sharing empowers the human economy. And one of the things that I talk about is the rule of thirds, and it's kind of like photography. Photography, when you see a photo, the neatest or the coolest looking photos are not the ones where the person is dead center in the middle of the photo. It's usually where somebody is off to the left or off to the right, which is the rule of thirds. The same thing for any object in a photo. And so if you start to post about the same thing all the time, then it starts to drown out and we don't pay attention to it anymore. So I suggest using the rule of thirds: a third about other people, a third about yourself, and a third about news pertaining to, or tips or whatever pertaining to your industry, so that you can get that out. When you start to share more in the rule of thirds, then people see the dynamic of you as a human and what you believe. But when you share all the time the same thing, then you become flat or one-dimensional, and that's what people are going to see. The other thing that I'll say is that when you share, and this goes to there's a piece of research that was done about human emotions, and emotions are what comes through. It's what people really identify with. What emotion you choose to share and the impact that you want on social media is what's going to get people to engage. Engagement should be your number one KPI, not likes, but engagement, comments. And the same thing for everything in your organization. Make engagement your number one KPI, and then your sales will go up, and then everything will go up because engagement is up. Obviously, I'm pointing to a positive engagement, not a negative engagement of that side going up. But when you get your engagement up, the reason that your engagement is going to go up is because of the emotions, the emotions that you share. So what's the impact of the emotion that you want? There's 6 different emotions. Paul Ekman describes the 6 emotions. There's angry, joy, surprise, humor, or fun, and so on. And when you get down into the emotions that you want, the thing that you need to remember is that people will reply, or they are reciprocal with an emotion based upon the emotion that you share. So if I share with anger, then other people are going to reciprocate with anger. If I share with surprise, people are going to share with surprise. The thing that we tend to do as humans on social media is we share the same emotion all the time. And again, we go flat. Try the emotions wheel, and see what flavors you can put out so that you can get a more dynamic human feel for who you actually are. And then you're going to drive more engagement.
That's interesting. I agree with you. I feel like we all have people on our social media. Let's say if we're talking just like friends and so forth, you have the negative guy or the negative girl that's always sharing bad news and bad stuff and just has a negative kind of approach. And then you have the motivational person that's sharing quotes and things and positivity and life is beautiful. And then you have the people who are just, around and sharing only, moments in their life which show that they're successful and so forth. So everybody almost has a lane, I feel, in their social media. So it's interesting to try a couple of things, to show, like you said, a little bit of anger, maybe a little bit of humor, and then a little bit of, personal experience and human touch. So I guess that's a really good thing until you get to your brand strategy. Because as you were talking about earlier, when you were asking me the examples of, which brand gives you empathy and so forth, there are some brands, like if we go back to Dove as a brand, I feel like they kind of harp on that same emotion of like acceptance and so forth. They don't really stray from that, in my opinion, from what I can tell. So do you think you should be testing all these different emotions until you find the right one and then stick to that one?
No. Once you stick to it, then that one emotion, then I think it's time to make sure that you still, because, as humans, we're not always happy. We're not always full of surprise. We're not always joy filled. We are those things, and we're more. And so we want to make sure that we're still continuing to share, spread or share in the emotional wheel. The other thing too is that I'll say that there are different kind of sharers. we all don't share it the same way. And so some of us have, and there's a New York Times study that I worked with that shares the different archetypes about how we share. And when you ask somebody to share that isn't a sharer, you're barking up the wrong tree. And so depending upon who you are, you might not share some certain emotion that might not be who you are. And so don't do that. Share who you authentically are and the emotions that comes to you. And that's going to create more connection. People really energetically, I think they can feel whether something is real or not real. And at least over time, maybe not right away. But it starts to come out and people start to really connect more with the and I hate using this word authentic, but it's the only one I have. But they start to connect with the authentic you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Yes, authentic is maybe sometimes a little bit overused and so forth, and be your authentic self and so forth. But at the end, yes, that is the right word. And, a lot of people have a hard time. And I find like it's not necessarily done on purpose, but even like I said, for Direct Paynet as a brand, sometimes we test different things and it may not speak to everybody and so forth. So I guess it is a little bit of trial and error in order to kind of, to figure it out. But it is important to try to be authentic. For example, I like to talk a lot about business things and conversions and so forth. It comes so naturally to me. I just love kind of talking about it. And more often than not, I put out a video about me giving a hack on a checkout page and whatever. And I'm so excited about it. Like I'm like, I have to share this with the world. And it does so well. And then when I talk about something that I feel a little bit less interested in, even though, for example, it's a popular topic on search or something for my industry, it just doesn't resonate. It just doesn't, you have to be excited. You have to feel it. But I do want to get a little bit into your coaching background, because you have, quite an extensive coaching background. Like you said, you've helped transform over 200 companies. So, this is a huge feat, and you've done it for very large companies as well. So I'm just wondering, can you tell us what are the common mistakes or things that companies overlook that can drive their marketing to be better, drive more customers to them? And I'm sure you've had a lot of kind of lessons in this, given how many companies you've helped transform. So is there common things that people do or common mistakes that they make that they can perhaps avoid by listening to this episode?
There's so many. We could spend like probably another hour on or more days on that question. That's a big one. But the biggest one that I would say that I come across is people not knowing their impact and what they want their impact to be. They're not clear. They're foggy. The company itself is not clear, or the department or the leader. Whoever it is that we're talking about, a lot of times we're not clear about what the impact is. And impact doesn't mean outcome. Outcome is a result where it usually is a dollar sign or a percentage sign. An impact is a feeling or an emotion connected with an outcome. And so when you look at an impact, like I believe that being human is everyone's competitive advantage is an outcome that I can create. And so the more that we can do that, then I can start to look at the dollars and cents, which is the outcome. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we could look at short-term projects, big projects, digital projects, and say, what is the impact that we really want out of this? And that's different than saying, like, I want 5% conversion or 3%, on page views or whatever it is. What is the feeling? What is the emotion that we want to connect with this? And how do we want people to feel on the other end, the customer? When we say like a campaign that comes out, we say that we want them to feel a certain emotion, like connected or community or whatever that is, that can lead to the expected outcome that we want in the world. And so start to connect more with impact statements rather than outcome statements.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I think just in the last couple of years, what I've seen, at least, because we get a lot of leads at Direct Paynet with we're looking at people's offers all day and seeing what they're doing and looking at, if we can get the merchant accounts and so forth. And I have seen obviously that a lot of people are starting to create like put a bigger focus on creating a brand? I could say, you've been doing this long enough to know, 10, 12 years ago, you just put a one pager up with, product on there. And if you're good at buying traffic and you buy enough, if you have enough money to buy the right eyeballs, the right amount of eyeballs, you convert those sales and you're good to go. Whereas right now, just with all the changes in algorithms and how expensive traffic is and so forth, if you don't have, like you said, some kind of emotion or an impact that you want to be made with your product, which to me sounds kind of like branding, like it's having a brand, having your voice out there. You're going to be left out in the dust, I think, in a couple of years. Gone are the days of like just buying traffic and the person with the biggest wallet winning. It's just I see that going away with all the algorithm changes and so forth. Is there a social media platform for most, let's say, direct to consumer brands that you like the best? Like that you think has the most potential for growth for businesses?
Yeah, it's the one that you build that has the closest niche and community. Anything that creates community right now, I think, is where your emphasis should be placed. And that's not necessarily on a LinkedIn or a Twitter or a Instagram. Where I think it is it's on a community platform that you build where you can engage in a conversation around topics that are going to serve the customer or serve the influencer or whoever it is that you build a community around. Community is the ideal platform. And there's 1,000 different platforms out there for communities that you can build on. I think that's where I'd spend my time if I were a brand, is building community around 1, 2, or 3 different areas, and then use the hub and spoke model that we've all learned so well to drive people into the community. So then if you're spending more time on Twitter, you're spending more time on LinkedIn, those are the two, and maybe Instagram, but some of those are the top ones to driving more of the hub being the community and the spokes being Twitter or Instagram. And I would just start with 1 or 2 and drive them into the community, drive more engagement into community, but use the hub and spoke model to create an owned land versus a rented land. Because if you build it on top of it, the rented land, as we've all seen, it can go away, it can change it. We don't know if it's going to be there tomorrow, and you don't own any of that data. So, build something where you can start to own your data and create more of that community.
I've seen so many companies, making seven figures a month and then disappearing the next month because of an algorithm change, because they said something they shouldn't and then it got banned and so forth. So when you're saying create an external community, the interesting thing, what I think about is an email list, which is email marketing is kind of a popular thing right now. Funny, we're always going back to old methods. Like you said earlier, mailing something. Email is like the oldest form of marketing online, and it's kind of making a comeback. Do you think that, that's a good way to build a community? Because I'm thinking for myself, we have, people contacting us from different forums and so forth, and we have all social media platforms are active and so forth. Is an email list probably the best way to connect with somebody, or is there another tool that you think, works best for kind of talking with and getting feedback from your customers?
Oh, I agree with you. I think email is the best one. I do think that the relationship probably starts off email, but eventually you want to move them on to email, and then from email into the community. But yeah, I think email is it's my favorite platform for engagement. I absolutely love email. I think you can spend more time creating work. I mean, not a lot of people do, but you could argue that it's not quality in certain areas, but I think you can spend more time being more intentional on email. And if you do it right, and I think that you can have engagement too. Again, as a KPI, I spend more time trying to encourage people to hit the reply button than to click. I'd rather see them reply back and us get into a conversation than see them click on something. And I don't sell anything in the emails. What I'm trying to do is get more human-to-human conversations going, because that's where I feel like the value is for both of us. And so, it used to be that it was crickets, and now I spend a good amount of my hour or two after I send an email out getting to actually engage with people. And that to me is where brands should be spending their time, is in engagement. And if we could use email, or we could use a community, or we could use social media, wherever you see that escalating, and that is the hub and spoke model. So you take them from social to email to community, then yeah, absolutely. I totally agree that email is a great way to do it.
Okay, awesome. Well, Bryan, can you tell us, you mentioned that you mentioned that you wrote a couple of books. Can you tell us the names of these books and where we can find them?
Yeah, they're both everywhere, including Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the different platforms. And the first book is Human to Human. There's no B2B or B2C. It's H to H, Human to Human. And then the second book is Shareology, How Sharing Powers the Human Economy. And that one's about the what, where, when, how, and why people and brands share. And in it, I actually outlined an equation for what to share, which we went over here about a little bit about why, the different ways that we could share through emotions and stuff like that. But it goes a little bit more in depth in the book.
And where can people find you if they need to reach out to you? You mentioned that you had an agency for a while. So can you tell us what you're focusing on now as your primary business and where people can find you?
Yeah, I'm an executive coach. I exited the company 5 years ago, and have been working with entrepreneurs and executives to help them grow their companies without burning out. And I look at ways that we can really tune up the company and expand it without putting in more effort, more work, and just putting in the things around them that will do that in the ways that I did with 3 of my companies. So that's where I spend most of my time. I'm at bryankramer.com everywhere. So at Bryan Kramer, Bryan with a Y, Kramer with a K. And you can sign up for any of my stuff there.
Awesome. So we'll have all the links down below for you guys. Definitely check out Bryan. He's got some interesting stuff to say about social media and how to connect as humans and as your brand to humans. Thank you so much, Bryan, for appearing on the show, and have yourself a great day.
Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Hope you found today's session valuable. If you have any questions for me or just want to connect, please feel free to visit my website, mariasparagis.com. That's mariasparagis.com. I'd love to hear what you're working on, so drop me a line on any hot button issues your business is experiencing. And remember, don't worry about failure. You only have to be right once.